Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Steelers YouTube channel, podcasting network. Chris Halicke, Matt Williamson, back to talk another 30 minutes on Steelers. Matt, what's going on, my friend? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing good, man.
Yeah.
It's been a fun week. Been a slower week, but still some news that we could talk about here for the first few minutes. The Steelers did some business with DeShon Elliott. We were talking about contract extensions, been talking about that. TJ Watt has obviously been the name we've talked about the most when it comes to contract extensions, but still a couple of other guys that we've been talking about. DeShon Elliott, they get a deal done with him. He signs a 2-year, $12.5 million extension, which keeps him under contract for the next 3 seasons in a Steelers uniform. I'm assuming, Matt, that you are in favor of this signing.
Quite a bit. Yeah. And I think last week we brought it up. I've certainly brought it up in my podcast and other outlets that there was Watt aside, which I assume will get done, and he's the big ticket item of extensions. I threw out Austin. I threw out Warren, but I thought Elliott was the most obvious. And,
yeah,
you know, for a lot of reasons. First off, safeties don't break the bank, and I like the money. I mean, I think that's you'll probably get every penny out of him. You know, the age, I think he's pretty much in his prime, coming off a really good year.
Mm-hmm.
Complements Minka very, very well. Divisional familiarity. One less need you have to deal with in the offseason. You know, I think people don't think about that, but just we're going to have a long to-do list in the offseason. Let's just make it one thing shorter. You know, we can worry about quarterbacks or whatever.
Yeah.
That's down the list. But I just like the player. I like the fit, and he's productive, and it's not real crazy money. It's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, no, I thought the only thing that I thought about this whole situation with DeShon Elliott was that not that it would necessarily that it was just impossible that it would get done, but maybe the Steelers would approach this like with maybe let's see it for one more year before we sign you like to an extension type situation. I don't know if that obviously that wasn't the case. They were absolutely fine going with what DeShon put on film last year and the way he played and the way he fit in the locker room. And by the way, like when the team was going through their 5-game losing streak to end the season, you know, DeShon Elliott was one of the more outspoken guys in that locker room. So he wasn't just, you know, it's not like he was like, oh, he's the 7th or 8th guy on the defense or anything like that. Like, no, like he was a safety and very, very outspoken. Not necessarily going to say, well, he's a team captain now or anything like that, but he definitely
invested.
You
know, he's in it to win it, you know, right?
Yeah. So I found that to be another interesting part of it. And I did think that of the chances that if somebody else was going to get extended prior to the season outside of TJ Watt, that DeShon was probably the most likely. And that did get done. And for the price that it was, for the production that he had, the efficiency as a tackler, again, setting the NFL Next Gen Stats record for tackle efficiency, having 108,
I didn't know that.
108 tackles and 111 opportunities.
Wow.
That is,
I was considered him a sure, solid tackler, but I didn't know the numbers behind it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's literally setting the Next Gen Stats record for tackle efficiency. I think with like minimum of, it's either a minimum of 100 opportunities or 75 opportunities, something around there. But either way, just a phenomenal football player. There was this running joke that we had every time we do live files during the game where we're chatting with all of our subscribers on DKPittsburghSports.com. And it seems like every single time DeShon Elliott would make a play, I would just be like, DeShon Elliott, what a pickup. And I swear I'd have to put that into chat like 5 or 6 times just because it was constant.
Copy paste.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was just constantly making plays.
Yeah, agreed. And it's not the hardest position to find. There's always safeties available, but there's also a reliability to that position too.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you don't want fluctuation. I've heard people, I mentioned it on my latest podcast and I read the comments, and some people were kind of calling it like a Ryan Clark, Troy combination, because the two players are very different. That's extreme. I mean, Troy's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but it's a really good safety pairing. I know this isn't what we're talking about, but I'm really intrigued with Thornhill as an upgrade over KZ.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of a sudden that position is very strong.
Yeah.
I think big nickel percentage will go up dramatically. I think Minka's ability to play more than deep dish middle will go up dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you and I have kind of kicked this around, but I'm expecting more cover 2, cover 4, Fangio stuff too, and he's equipped to do that.
Yes, I do agree. I'm not saying they're going to become a primarily cover 2, cover 4 middle field open team.
Mm-hmm.
That's never really seemed to be Mike Tomlin. He's always been more cover 3.
Yeah.
And then, a healthy dose of man, whether usually cover 1 when the running man.
Not to fight you, but remember a million years ago, he came from a Tampa 2.
He did. He did. I do understand that's in his background.
Sure.
But when you think of obviously these Steelers defenses under Mike Tomlin, now granted for a good portion of that, it was Dick LeBeau as a defensive coordinator. And obviously when we're talking about fire zone and all the zone blitzes, a lot of that was done out of cover 3. That was just, that's just the way those were constructed.
That's what he inherited too,
Right.
That kind of came from ownership.
Right. But no, we still see, we still see a good healthy dose of Tampa 2 in the Steelers defense. Now there is a misconception that they run like predominantly Tampa 2. That is not what they do. No. When you have a linebacker like Patrick Queen, who can be that deep, middle linebacker in Tampa 2, you take advantage of it. And when you have safeties that can also fill that role, when you want to run with 3 safeties, and you can literally have Minkah Fitzpatrick, Juan Thornhill, DeShon Elliott, all back there.
Pretty intriguing.
Why not?
Yeah.
Sure, you can run more of it. And I would like to see, because and this is just a completely different discussion, I would like to see the Steelers utilize a little bit more cover 4. And I'm talking more like match cover 4, because there's a gigantic misconception that, you have 4 deep defenders, you can't defend the run. Actually, it's a very, very strong coverage against the run too, because if those 2 number 2s on the inside don't do anything to attack those 2 deep defenders, that's 2 deep defenders crashing down into the box to help defend the run. So it's a really solid coverage, and it's becoming more and more frequently used in the league. And I think the Steelers need to get with the times on that a little bit too. So
I want more coverage variance.
Yes. And I think you'll see that. I think with the personnel that they have, they're better equipped to do that.
Yeah. And I think Slay replacing Jackson helps that immensely as well.
Agreed.
You mentioned Queen. We mentioned the 3 safeties. I'm going to throw Peyton Wilson and Holcomb in there too.
Oh, yeah.
6 middle of the field defenders that are all high quality players,
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that the personnel that they have allows them to be more allows them to be more flexible with their coverages, and getting business done with DeShon Elliott is definitely a great way to do that and make sure you have some continuity there for the next 3 years. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we are going to look at a bit of other news that happened actually earlier today, and then kind of look at it through the lens of maybe how do the Steelers stack up? Maybe against the Ravens, maybe against the rest of the AFC North, but just how do the Steelers stack up? We'll address that right after this.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Steelers YouTube channel and podcasting network. Matt Williamson and I back talking Steelers football earlier today, recording this on June 18th. The Ravens signed Jerry Alexander from the Packers to a 1-year, $6 million contract. Really, really affordable contract.
Yeah.
Initial reaction to that, Matt, because it seems like there are a good amount of Steelers fans that were pretty upset that not only did he not sign with the Steelers, but that he signed with the Ravens.
Yeah, and I think he publicly, or at least I read the headline, said, I took less to go play with my buddy Lamar, who played at Louisville together. You know, he's my good buddy. I think he's a phenomenal player. So even if the Steelers offered him 10, he might have said no. I mean, people forget these things. You know, like I was asked, you know, not that people are, I'm not giving him a hard time, but I did a mailbag today for my podcast, and I was asked, you know, why not bring back James Daniels at a reasonable cost? I'm like, well, he goes to Miami with no competition for a guard spot, doesn't have any state taxes. You know, like these guys have some say in this too. You know, it's not just you can just grab anybody you want.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Alexander, more than anything, wanted to play with the Ravens, who legitimately are a contender with an elite quarterback who's one of his best buddies. And kind of like I'm looking at the Steelers situation, was he a massive need for the Ravens? No, but get greedy with potential great players at positions that are hard to find, throw them in the mix. I think Nate Wiggins, their first-round pick from last year, isn't super physical, but I think he's got a really bright future and came on really strong. Humphreys has been a star for them for a handful of years, if not more, but he's the slot in 3 receivers. I don't know how it'll shake out, but it makes your biggest opponent stronger. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, it definitely does. But I think my initial reaction to the whole thing wasn't that. Obviously, I think the Ravens got a pretty good football player. I'm not taking anything.
When he's on the field, he's excellent.
Right. Just I guess my own trepidation for whether or not the Steelers should have added him. Let's just say that there was a possibility that Alexander actually thought about signing with the Steelers and that they were really interested. What was going to be the fit there? Because they got Joey Porter Jr., they got Darius Slay. Those are 2 outside corners. Alexander pretty much only plays the outside.
Yeah.
Hardly ever plays in the slot. I mean,
I would argue you'll just figure it out, but I see what you're saying. If you're going to spend a premium resource, you might as well go get something that fits your needs more or is more versatile. You know,
that's kind of my point. Is like listen, you can go and get I think it makes a lot of sense to go get good players for sure.
Right.
But absolutely get good players that I'm switching sports here. I think about like I think it was 2013 Penguins team, hockey team. They just got all kinds of talent added to the roster, and it was a loaded roster. I mean, and it was a great team. The team went undefeated in all of March. They were going into the playoffs, and it was like, okay, should we just give the Stanley Cup to the Penguins now? And when they started it, obviously when playoffs come and the game changes a bit, things changed where it's got to make sense.
Yeah.
You can have all the talent in the world, but it's got to make sense. And there were certain
not fantasy football, right?
Right. There were certain instances on that Penguins team that it just didn't make sense. And
where's my Troy Loney and Phil Bork and right? That's I hear it, right?
It's like you can have all kinds of talent, and to me, adding Alexander, even though it would have been a 1-year, $6 million contract, it's nothing against the cap, so you're not giving up anything.
No, right.
But if you can use that $6 million to bring in, we'll bring in Jalen Ramsey, or we'll bring in, what if that helps pay for another wide receiver? That makes more sense. Jalen, if you want to add another corner, I'm all fine with adding another corner. But like I just brought up Jalen Ramsey, I think we talked about it before we got on the show. That makes way more sense to me because he at least can play the slot well, and he's right. I don't
know how much time we want to spend on that, but I'm super intrigued with that. I brought that up, I think, before anyone. I mean, that's, hey, I know you don't need him. And I'll be honest, I've been around Mike Tomlin a couple times where Jalen Ramsey's name comes up and he lights up. I mean, like, he's a back coach with his talents, and he could even be a future safety, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I would be way more interested than Ramsey than Alexander because he does a lot of different stuff. He's a middle of the field defender and he's an outside guy. He's bigger. Frankly, he's more reliable. Alexander's never on the field. If the Steelers would have signed Alexander for 1 year, $8 million, I still would have gotten fine too, just because give me good players. But the point about the Penguins and third line grinders and that kind of stuff also makes sense too, is this is a puzzle. It's not just a bunch of pretty pieces, you know?
Right. And so I don't personally see, and maybe it's just because I'm not invested. I don't know. I saw Alexander sign with the Ravens and I didn't blink twice at it. Like I didn't
love that he ended up there. I wish he'd have been a Ram, you know.
Right.
But, yeah, right.
But, you know, it's not the first time the Ravens have been loaded at corner. Mm-hmm. Shoot, man, like they had a good secondary, like in terms of personnel last year.
Yeah.
And then the first half of the season, personnel didn't matter. They were god awful in terms of giving up
coverages and terrible. Right. Yeah.
It was just, and then, you know, they made a bit of a change in the midseason. They brought in some help on the coaching staff, and you know that changed a lot of things up. And
let's stick there for 1 second, because I know people don't pay as much attention even to the biggest rival. But you're right. There was a lot of communication and a lot of coaching issues there. And frankly, their defensive coordinator went to be the head coach at Seattle. So that's going to hurt you. But more than that, their next two assistants went to become defensive coordinators in Tennessee and Miami. Like top three dudes got taken out of there. And then I think it was about the bye. You know, they did bring, I think Dean Pease came back. You know, veteran, been around the block, old man, you know, knows how this stuff works. Start putting the pieces in the right spots, including putting Zach Harrison in for Trenton Simpson, you know, just because of reliability. He's not the, you know, Hamilton did a lot more deep middle, but they got way better. You know, I mean, they started living up to their defensive potential. But to your point, now they've added Alexander, Malachi Starks in the first round. You know, I mean, like secondary looks pretty good.
They did lose one of their safeties for the year.
Darius Washington.
Yeah.
He was a good player, but he's a little guy, you know, right.
Right. But no, their secondary definitely look, again, in terms of just what you see on the roster, they have done everything they could in terms of adding to the roster to help make sure that that's not a problem again in 2025. But from the Steelers' perspective, and maybe this is where we can kind of shift, is how do they stack up right now? Like the Ravens are obviously the front runner in the division. They should be. You can make a really good argument between Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Some people will just stay stuck in the past and say Lamar Jackson's a great runner and not a great passer. I wholeheartedly disagree.
Yes.
And so I think just in terms of danger, obviously Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson hasn't. But I still think either way, they're 1A, 1B in the division in terms of quarterbacks. But the Ravens roster is way more loaded than the Bengals are, which is why, to me, they're the clear-cut favorite. But the Steelers and Ravens seem to always kind of be close to each other. They play similarly. They're both, you know, relying on the run first. Where do the Steelers stack up? If we have to break this down by position, I'm fine with doing that. But where do the Steelers stack up in this division, whether it be against the Ravens and Bengals? I'm leaving the Browns out of this. They're the last in the division.
Yeah.
Where do the Steelers stack up right now? What do you think?
Okay. I do think the Browns defense is going to be highly respectable, but it's going to be on the field a ton like it was last year and be a mess. And they're going to go through quarterback after quarterback. And I don't understand why he wouldn't draft an offensive lineman. So they're a distant fourth, and they're even Vegas odds are at the top or bottom of the list, however you want to see it, to get the first overall pick. You know, like they're not a good football team and they're short. And so they're last. Now, I do believe in the conference or even in the hierarchy of the league, the Ravens can hang with anybody. I mean, they might be my Super Bowl pick this year. I know that they haven't had tons of playoff success. They haven't gone, but I have great respect for the organization. I think they're really difficult to play against. They have grabbed a couple older Jari Alexander, DeAndre Hopkins, you know, win now moves while Henry's still available and all that good stuff. Great respect for the coaching staff, of course. So I think in the conference is the best way to look at this.
Yeah.
Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens are tier 1.
Yep.
But I do think the Steelers are now firmly in tier 2 with Rodgers there, and especially if they can add another receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably put Houston ahead of the Steelers, but I'm not certain. I mean, their O-line is really, really scary.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of their team I like a lot. But I think the Bengals and Steelers are both tier 2 teams. Burrow carries so much weight in this conversation, though.
He really does.
I mean, so much weight.
Yep.
But their defense, to me, isn't any better and could get worse. I mean, especially if Hendrickson's not there or the first-round pick. Or I mean, I don't like with the organization. Like all the praise I said about the Ravens, I think the opposite of the Bengals.
So if you go through, I think, just about any betting site right now,
yeah,
the Bengals are the second, are, just in terms of betting odds, are second, have the second best odds to win the AFC North.
Right. And they're not that far off in overall Super Bowl
I don't see
victory, and I would never bet on them.
I just don't see it.
I
That
don't either.
to me is the worst bet in all of football, or at least up there with one of the worst bets in all of football. I understand. I have immense respect for Joe Burrow.
Oh, yeah.
And if I would have been part of, I obviously voted in the PFWA awards and I voted for Josh Allen for MVP. But if I would have been, part of the AP group that would have voted and you get to vote on place, to me, it would have been Josh Allen and Joe Burrow number 2.
Oh, wow.
For MVP. And then Lamar Jackson 3.
They were all remarkable.
That would have been me, just because there's no way that Bengals team should have been at least 9-8.
No, lose all those
No
games
way.
where you score 35 plus or whatever, too. No way.
And that, I mean, like, Joe Burrow is amazing. He's got 2 phenomenal wide receivers. He's got a good tight end in Mike Gesicki. And they have nothing else.
They have nothing else. I mean, the O-line is at best. I mean, I think it's a below average O-line, below average running game. Right.
I saw
they're so dependent on 3 players.
Like Pro Football
and really
Focus,
4 is Hendrickson, and they're screwing him over.
Pro Football Focus came out with their top 32 running backs. Chase Brown was on the list and Jaylen Warren was not. And I'm sorry, I just don't get it. Maybe it's only because Jaylen Warren doesn't have the body of work. But in terms of a lot of actual numbers, like analytics and numbers, Jaylen Warren is a better running back than Chase Brown, in my opinion.
I tend to agree.
I'm not saying
Brown handled a very heavy workload when Moss went down, which is not what you'd ask of Warren.
Right. And
but who would I rather touch the ball? Warren.
Right. And who can probably do a little bit more and be a little bit more reliable in a lot of different circumstances.
Protection, running routes, right.
So that's nothing against Brown. I think they're both. I think they're both in a similar arena, but that's why I'm saying. Like, I see Brown on the list, and I'm thinking. I actually thought as soon as I saw Chase Brown as I'm going through the list, I'm like, I think Jaylen Warren's probably like right after him or like 2 spots after him, and just he wasn't on the list. I'm like, okay, I think they're pretty close. But I even think Jaylen Warren might have a bit of an edge there. But
this is kind of an interesting conversation because the teams are so built so differently. Like
they are.
I don't know the PFF lists, and I don't think that website is the Bible either. But I do go there every day, and I respect it. And there's a lot to learn there, and there's a lot of data. But there's only 4 Bengals that I can promise are going to be on the list. You know what I mean? Like on anyone's list,
right?
Burrow, 2 receivers, and Hendrickson. Where the Steelers have more than that on defense. The Ravens have triple that. I mean, yes, some of they might have other ones that made their list. That's not what I'm saying, folks. I don't know their list, but they have 4 players that would be on anyone's top 20 list.
Right.
And then questions, or that's even being kind, subpar dudes. You know what I mean? And they're screwing over Hendrickson right now.
Yeah, and so that's the other part of it is that not only is their defense a mess, they can't get things figured out with Trey Hendrickson. Like I think Steelers fans think the negotiations with TJ Watt are going as bad as they actually are with the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson. And that's just not the case.
No.
So like things are going bad with Hendrickson. I think they are talking again, which that's at least a step in the right direction.
Right.
But
then
now
the first round picks talking about not ever playing again, like going back in the draft.
You can't this is so bad. Like, it's so bad. And I almost don't, again, I said everything that I did about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all that to say, with all the respect that I have for the Bengals and like for those three guys on the Bengals, they could score 35 points every single week and they still might be a 9-8, 8-9 football team.
Let alone if they happen to lose one of those guys. Like, it would hurt them if they lost Chase or Burrow. It would hurt more than if the Steelers lost.
They'd be a top 5. They'd be a top 5 pick in the
right,
draft.
right. I mean, any game they're missing one of those guys. They're so top heavy.
Yeah, and so I see the Steelers situation, and I don't think that they're close to winning the division yet.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Like I think that they.
I'll probably pick them to be second, though.
Oh yeah. No, I think because I think the Steelers, as of right now, I'm not making any predictions for.
Yeah, it's not predictions.
For like record and everything, but I think right now this is I could say pretty confidently I think this is a team that can win at least 10 games.
I lean that way too.
If they go 10-7, that's most likely good enough to at least make the playoffs. And I think that's a pretty good chance that you finish second in the AFC North.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say second place. Ravens probably win 12 games. You finish second in your division. Okay.
Yeah. I would retract something I said about 10 minutes ago because I do firmly believe those top 3 teams in the AFC are tier 1 and all are very much Super Bowl contenders, could win the whole thing, could be the best team in the league. And I do still believe the Steelers are a tier 2 team. But I'm not sure the Bengals are. Yeah, I mean, Bengals might be the best of tier 3, like a little bit better than the Colts and teams like that, where the tier 2s to me are like the Texans and Broncos and Chargers and Steelers. If I'm putting Cincinnati in that group, they might be last, even though they have by far the best quarterback. And I love Herbert and Stroud.
The best quarterback of that group.
He's so great.
The best. I mean, when you talk about those top 3 teams with the Ravens, the Bills, and the Chiefs, they all have quarterbacks. All 3 have
3 of the 4 superheroes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. All 3 of those guys have won MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at all the other quarterbacks in the AFC, maybe even the NFL, and it's like, who's next? It's Joe Burrow, most likely.
Oh, yeah, right. I think there's 4 elite quarterbacks, and 2 of them have to be in the division. The other 2 happen to be the guys that eliminate you every year. You know?
And so I like your perspective because, to swing this back, and I think this is a good point to close on, is where does Rodgers play into this? Because Rodgers is obviously not who he was. Because if we're talking, if the Steelers magically put 2021 Aaron Rodgers on their team, they're a Super Bowl contender.
I agree. Especially one more receiver, but yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you put MVP level Aaron Rodgers on this football team right now, that's why I'm saying 2021 Rodgers, because that was the last time he won MVP.
Like, if Burrow here, they'd be the best team in the league.
Right. And so that's why I'm saying, like, with Rodgers, he's obviously not in those in the same tier as those 4 when we're talking in terms of quarterback level.
But he was.
He was. And so, but even with where he is now.
And he definitely was not last year with the Jets. I mean,
no,
close to those guys. I mean,
I will say though, and again, I'm now 8 games into that season.
Okay, yeah.
My biggest takeaway so far is not even anything Rodgers related. It is that offensive line was atrocious.
Dysfunction junction.
They could not pick up stunts.
Right. Basic stuff. Coordinators getting fired. Head coaches getting fired.
I mean, the last game that I also watched the broadcast, the condensed game to go along with it. They burned 3 timeouts. Their 3 timeouts in the first quarter against the Patriots in Week 8,
really?
Because they couldn't get plays in time. They had just changed play calling duties from Nathaniel Hackett to I don't even know who.
Yeah,
and
Rodgers had to be losing his mind.
You could see it. I mean, their first drive, they line up. They don't get it on 3rd down because Breece Hall dropped a pass. Then they line up to try to draw the Patriots offside. The Patriots don't fall for it. And then Ulbrich pulls them off, and he's gonna go punt, and Rodgers just shaking his head. He does the thing where he unstraps the chin strap, puts it back, tucks it back, and snaps it back, and he's just shaking his head. And I'm like, we're into the first drive of the game, like this,
and he's already maddened. Yeah,
it was such a bad football team. You have no idea unless you actually go back and watch. Now, I'm also
because I've had a lot of people tell me, well, the Jets had better players last year than the Steelers.
Oh God, no. I'm sorry. Like, and for a couple of players,
maybe like Breece Hall might be better than Najee, and Wilson's better than Pickett, and blah. Like they have some dudes, but it takes coaching and coordination to make these guys work. It wasn't like they had terrible players across the board.
See, Denny says Aaron goes as high as his receivers will take him. I kind of understand what you're saying, but like I'm watching. Okay, first 6 weeks there was complete disconnect between him and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
Unless it was a go route, and even then, like back shoulder, that stuff wasn't even down. There was just, they were never on the same page. That stuff didn't start coalescing until after. Actually, no, it was the game before they acquired Devontae Adams.
I say it gets better when Adams shows up.
It did get better. And so far, it has been better since Adams showed up.
At least the passing game stuff, the routes,
correct.
And the same page stuff.
Correct, but and this
protection doesn't get much better.
It does not. It does not. And again, it's just it's basic procedural stuff that they're missing. It's basic assignments for protection that they're missing.
And they had the fewest rushing attempts in the whole league. So they didn't even rely on that, And
see, that's the other thing. And again, this is where does Rodgers fit into all this? Taking the 2024 Aaron Rodgers, and I'm learning this as I'm going through this, is that, listen, the Steelers aren't getting 2024 Aaron Rodgers. And the reason why they're not getting him is because the Jets in 2024 asked Aaron Rodgers to be their savior and pretty much said, dude, we're handing the franchise over to you. You get to decide who the head coach is by week 6. You get to decide who who's calling the plays. We get to bring in your buddy Devontae Adams. We've got Alan Lazard here for you. We've got everything for you. And now go and throw the ball more than outside, I think, like second most of the entire league. Throw the ball and just win us everything.
While coming up a massive injury.
Right. And it's like, dude, it was such a no, they're not. They are going to be a run first team. They're going to be a team that asks Aaron Rodgers to play more within the structure of the offense, which again, it's going to be an offense that's going to be very familiar to him because of the Arthur Smith, Matt LaFleur connection. So
make me 5 to 8 throws a game that Wilson and others couldn't. I still need you to make not Superman throws, I don't need to be Burrow,
Exactly.
But right. On third and 8 though, I need you to stick one in there for me once.
I'll put this in a perspective so that fans can understand it. We need you to be Mason Rudolph for those final 3 games in 2023, but with the ability to summon 2020, 2021 Aaron Rodgers for 5 to 7 plays a game.
Yeah, exactly. And every play of the game pre-snap.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, get me out of bad plays. Don't run into loaded boxes. You know what I mean? Maybe draw someone off sides. Get a flag on whenever they're trying to switch defensive personnel.
Yep.
Be crafty and be the old man at the Y. It still gets every rebound.
Not asking him to be the savior. Not handing him the reins to everything and saying, all right, you're our guy. We're going to hand everything over to you, and our fate is in your hands. That's what the Jets did. It failed miserably.
It's a terrible plan.
Yes. And so the Steelers are going to be like, no, we want you to be the one who helps orchestrate everything on the football field within what's planned. And that I think it's going to be a much better situation, which is why I think in terms of where the Steelers,
he knows that's who he is. End of career Elway,
Yep. End of career Elway, end of career Peyton Manning, Favre, like those type of guys. And when they're on the right football teams, and again, Peyton Manning didn't have an arm.
No, he was only from the neck up. That's all he had.
Exactly. He was from the neck up, and he also had a Broncos team that had a ridiculously good defense, which is why they won the Super Bowl that year.
Which I don't know if you can still do that. That wasn't that long ago, but I'm not sure that version of Peyton Manning could win the Super Bowl this year.
No, probably not. But that Broncos defense was the defense that unseated
It was like the best
the
we've seen.
Seahawks from being the best defense in the league, and the Seahawks were the number one defense 3 years in a row.
Yeah, but Rodgers has more in the tank than that version of Manning, though.
Correct.
I mean, in terms of passing and ability.
I'm not even at the good portion of Rodgers' season from last year, and I can already see that.
No doubt.
He made even this past game. He made, like, again, week 8 against the Patriots. He made a throw to Ty Conklin in the end zone where he literally had to, like, the few times that Rodgers has to rear it back, he reared it back and he fired it into like a tiny little window. It's still there, man. He's got plenty.
The things that are maybe missing, I know we're up against it here, is he's not the playmaker, improv, Mahomes guy he was 10 years ago.
Right.
The Jets needed him to be, back to your previous point.
Right.
I don't think the Steelers need him 4 seconds into the play, throwing underhand Favre stuff. You know what I mean? Like, run the plays.
Exactly. Run. That's why I said, because when people hear 2023 Mason Rudolph, that's what he was there running the plays.
Yeah.
He was dropping back, making his reads, making his throws based off of what his eyes were telling him. And it was competent quarterback play. And it led to a very efficient, productive
coordinator than the guy that was there earlier too.
Right. And so that's why I'm saying be that a guy who will play within structure of the offense, and then 5 to 7 plays a game, drill
one in there, you know?
Yeah, summon the fountain
back
of youth.
Shoulder throw to Metcalf or something that you haven't seen for a while, you know?
Yeah.
That I'll take my chances with that.
Absolutely. And then whenever you get into the playoffs, then all bets are off. Maybe he can put the Superman cape on still. I don't know. But if there's anybody who's ever going to do it at his age, it's going to be one of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones who really pulled off.
You'll still probably fall short to Lamar, Allen, or Mahomes. Probably. As will all the other teams. But I like my chances better.
Absolutely. All right. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back. Actually, no, we will not be back next week. I need to let you guys know I am going to be on vacation.
Okay.
I'm going to be in Texas for a little while, visiting family and friends. So we will not have a show next week. But the week after, it'll probably be later in the week. But
we'll figure it out.
It'll be right up against 4th of July, by the way. We won't do it on 4th of July, though. 4th of July is reserved for hot dogs, burgers, beer, all that kind of stuff.
All that good stuff.
Fireworks, too, of course. Anyway, we'll catch you guys later. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you later.